Good evening, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting of September 30th, 2013. We have a varied agenda this evening, but the first one, which is one I'm very glad to introduce, Chief McGowan, in the appointment of his new police officer. Please, Chief.
Good evening, thank you for having me. Tonight, I'm very happy to make a recommendation of the board and hope that you'll agree with me that I'd like to suggest or offer Officer Brian Collins as our next full-time police officer. We had an opening on the department due to Detective Hagan's retirement last month, and Officer Collins has been with us since November of 2012 as a special officer, and before that he worked 2 full semesters, so basically a full year, full-time for us with the Northeastern Co-op student program. So comes highly recommended. He's worked his way through our training program with not a glitch, sailed right through it, and the entire department is happy to have him.
Great. Brian, how are you? You want to introduce anybody who came with you this evening?
This is my father, Jay, and my mother,
Sure.
Linda.
Welcome. You must be very proud. Now, Northeastern's been good to the town.
It's been great to the town. We have a program where we take a student for 6 months at a time, and they're assigned to 11 to 7 for our overnight dispatch shift, and they've got full hands-on responsibility for all the communications and whatever paperwork needs to be done. And every once in a while, the star comes up like Brian, we talk him into a second term, and next thing you know, we've got him.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, it said that you are a couple of weeks away from completing your bachelor's?
Yeah, the first week of December.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
You gonna go to grad school after that?
Maybe online.
So, Mr. and Mrs. Collins, you've got a son who's graduating, getting a degree, and is immediately employed. Doesn't get much better than that.
Well, that's fantastic, Brian, congratulations. Robin, do you have anything to say?
No, we're pleased to have you come on board and looking forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
Well, at that point, I believe we have to take a vote. That's correct, thank you, Mr. Ramsey. And I'll be the one happily to make Officer Brian Collins the newest officer in the Dover Police Department. I'll make that motion. Do I hear a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Brian, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Guy, hands you the hand. Thank you.
Welcome. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Now, if these meetings are long and boring, you don't have to stay for them if you like.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Chief. Well, that was good. Northeastern's been very good to the town and all
Yes.
these police officers. It's
Wonderful.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, we've only had one dry spell in all the years I've been here. There was one period we couldn't find them for like 6 months, but otherwise they've been a great recruitment center for us.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the fiscal 2015 general wage increase. And our personnel board, Mary Carrigan is here this evening to speak to the suggestions. Mary, please, you have the floor.
I'll do a quick recap, although we do this every year at this time. The general increase covers the non-union employees, and it also covers the fire employees. And we developed a process over the last 10 years. The Personnel Board works in conjunction with the Warrant Committee and with the Selectmen, and to make the recommendation and to approve it. And what we've done over the past 10 years is try to build a data foundation for making these recommendations. And what we've done is we've looked at the trends for the CPI, cost of goods, and we looked at the ECI, which is the compensation movement over time. And with that, we try to keep our people at market. And so you'll see here, if you look at the broad range, that since 2003, the CPI has averaged 2.85, the ECI has averaged 2.79, so they're very close. And the average up until this year for 2015 budget year, it's been 2.95. We spoke with the warrant committee earlier last week, and our recommendation is a 2% increase. And we've done that looking at the local numbers, and what we're seeing is the Northeast to ECI is now at 2%, the US is at 1.9, not much difference. If you look at the CPI, the Northeast is at 1.8 and the US is at 2%. So it's all within a tight band. We've looked at some of our union negotiations that are going on, and we feel that the 2% is probably the wise move at this point in time. We expect it would cost about $50,000. It's about $25,000 a percentage point. So with that background, we went to the warrant committee, they voted the 2% that we recommended, and now we're here at the Selectmen to finalize the process.
Very good. Well, one of the key aspects of the way the Personnel Board looks at it every year is you want to consistently apply a formula
That's right.
for the sake of fairness, and I appreciate that very much. You guys probably a little appreciated the group, but you do a great job for the town.
Well, we
Thank you,
appreciate
Mary.
it, and we have a good team with the warrant committee who work a lot harder than we do on a lot of other things on the budget. And I think this makes a lot of sense, because you can't predict that much in advance, a year and a half, as to what things will be. But if you use a consistent methodology, you'll either get ahead of it or get behind it, but you'll stay pretty much on point.
Okay.
And it will be self-correcting.
Yes, it will.
You know, I think it's also important to recognize that the Personnel Board's goal is to maintain the employee salary level at the median. And this is just a cost of living increase. Along with that, there's a survey that is done, I think the last one was done five years ago.
A little bit shorter than that.
A little bit
yes,
shorter than
yes.
that, you know, matches roles and responsibilities to salaries in the comparable area. And so this increase should maintain the median point, which is where we want to be.
When is the next plan review?
Well, we need to think about that. I don't think that was, we talked about it at the last meeting, general meeting, and I think we'll probably wait another year. What we found is that this process has kept us pretty much on track, so we'll pick the right time to do it again.
Okay.
But not this year, or maybe a year out.
Okay.
Of course, the other aspect to that is the impact that our salary structure has on our ability to attract and retain employees. And my sense is that that salary and benefits has not been an issue in either attracting or retaining.
It has not.
Right.
Well, that's very
So,
positive.
right.
That's very positive.
And that's an important point. We actually discussed it at the last Personnel Board meeting. I was remiss in not mentioning that, so thank you.
Okay. I do not have any questions. I did hear this before the warrant committee last week, and I heard they asked great questions, and they were satisfied. So I do not have any further questions. Carol?
Nor do I.
Robin?
I don't either.
I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to recommend a 2% general increase for non-union employees of the town of Dover for fiscal year 2015. Did I get that right?
Yes,
Yep.
it did.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mary, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Mary.
I would like to also thank Mary and the entire Personnel Board for all the work that they do. I would agree with you. We don't always thank the people enough.
Yeah.
And they do spend a lot of time with
That's a good
us.
point.
So thank you, Mary.
Good.
See you next year.
Okay, on the agenda, next item was going to be the regional schools athletic fields site plan review, which is a comprehensive plan to improve the fields around the regional schools. And the boosters were going to come in this evening and talk about it. They are not ready to come in, so we'll put that off to a further Board of Selectmen meeting. You have any more to add to that, Robin?
I mean, my only comment was in conversations with the boosters, they apologized for their short notice, and I suggested that perhaps in the early spring, we get back in touch with them and put this back on the agenda.
So there's no rush on this?
There's no rush on it right now.
Good, thank you. As we're moving along, the next agenda item is the Council of Aging request to accept or expend the fiscal 2014 formula grant monies. Betty, would you like to speak to that?
Actually, Janet was going to be here at 6:50.
Okay, we can come back to this agenda
Would you
item.
like to?
Sure, absolutely.
She said she's across the street, she'll be over.
No
Okay.
problem at all. I will get back to the council aging request. Things are moving a little quicker than we anticipated, but sometimes that's good. The next agenda item is the Cultural Council's request to accept and expend grant monies. And as you know, the town has developed gift and grant policies in the last few months to adhere to the Mass General laws. And so much, the Council Aging wants to adhere to this. And Dave, can you speak to this matter?
Cultural Council receives grant monies, they're a modest amount annually, Mr. Chairman, and what's in your packet is a list of the last year's awards totaling $4,170 to 11 recipients in sums essentially between $200 and $500 per. So with this new policy, they asked us, how do you want to process that? Do you want to go through the arduous process of 11 separate submittals over time, or would you be comfortable just giving us a permission to expend this year's grant monies in a similar fashion, in similar amounts, to recipients to be determined in the fiscal 14 cycle?
Sure.
So that's what they're asking for tonight.
Well, it makes all reasonable sense. I'd like to see him adhering to the new policy. Does anybody have any questions in this matter? No, Robin?
No, I think, from an administrative standpoint, this is a good suggestion,
Mhm.
but, I reserve the right to see how it works out this year. And
That's an
And then-
excellent point. Okay, so I will make the motion to allow the Dover Cultural Council to distribute $4,170 to, it looks like, 11 grant applicants.
Approximately.
Approximately.
4,100 over 11.
Okay, and do I, yes, Karen?
Is the 4170 the same amount for fiscal year 14?
That's why I said approximately, it may vary a bit.
Okay.
Approximate, okay.
So why don't we have like a not-to-exceed number, so perhaps like not to exceed $4,500 in grants?
Okay. You want to clean up my motion? Go ahead.
I cleaned it up already.
Okay, let me reiterate that then. Then I'll make a motion that we approve the Dover Cultural Council's expending of not to exceed $4,500 on approximately a dozen grant recipients.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good, thank you. Not to exceed. Okay, I think it's time we can come back to the Council on Aging matter, and that is to request or accept or expend fiscal 2014 formula grant monies. And welcome Janet, Nancy, Betty. Who's going to speak on this behalf this evening? Great, thank you, Janet. Please, you have the floor.
We're submitting today to the Board of Selectmen. We're asking for you to approve acceptance and expenditure of the formula grant fiscal year 14 amount that we received from the Department of Elder Affairs. We received an annual formula grant from the State Department of Elder Affairs to promote, enhance, and/or support the health, well-being, and independence of seniors in our community. In 1983, the Department of Elder Affairs started offering formula grants based on the number of elders in each community. Formula grants are funded based on the senior population of a town per the federal census. The senior population of ages 60 and over in the town of Dover is 1,146 per the federal 2010 census. So in fiscal year 2013, the formula grant was set at $7 an elder, or $8,022 for the town of Dover. In fiscal year 2014, which is the grant that we're putting before you tonight, the formula grant was increased to $8 an elder, which is $9,168 for this fiscal year. I believe you have a copy of the grant that has been shared with you. And so you can see that the line items in the budget detail some of the issues and items that we're addressing. Per the Department of Elder Affairs, the typical formula grant requests are for personnel, which includes a variety of administrative, outreach, program development, coordination, and other direct service positions, as well as health and wellness programs, transportation, nutrition, support activities, and operating costs. The COA's budget submitted to Elder Affairs contains line items for the administrative assistant hours, the volunteer coordinator hours, instructors for fitness classes, and office supplies. The new line item that you can see on the grant this year, as compared to previous years, is for the volunteer coordinator position. This position was previously funded by a federal grant, the Title III Older Americans Act funds, and was administered by a regional area agency on aging. These funds were not renewed, as due to sequestration, the grant funds were reduced. And with grant requests exceeding the monies available, grant priorities were limited to transportation and minority outreach, neither of which this position fell under. The COA Board of Directors felt the volunteer coordinator position made a significant impact on recruiting volunteers to serve seniors, setting up volunteer programs, such as the Fall Yard Cleanup Program with the Dover Sherburne High School football team, and creating a system to track our volunteer services. The COA Board is requesting approval to accept and expend the formula grant funding of $9,168 awarded in July 2014 to provide services to seniors in our community.
Thank you. Thank you. I know you've provided an awful lot of information this evening to us, which is great. Thank you very much. I know, Greer, you worked hard on this also, so thank you on that.
Janet worked hard on it. I just asked a few questions.
Well, the teamwork is everything in this town. Teamwork.
So I have a couple of questions, and please excuse my ignorance. I read through your material, and being the newest member of the Board of Selectmen, I'm just learning as to how different departments work in the town.
Yes.
So one of the things I was hoping maybe you could share with me, and since Nancy, I understand you were the volunteer coordinator last year.
Yeah.
So the one program you did mention was the fall cleanup program. So I'm wondering, what were there other programs last year, and then do you have goals for new programs for this year?
I know I provided a copy of that, and I'm not sure if that, we have that to you. There was one that was listing the volunteer projects that were accomplished last year, and then also for volunteer coordinated projects proposed for fiscal year 2014. So, for example, and Nancy, please jump in if there's any for last year that we worked on. It was a bit of a learning curve for us too in creating this position. One of the things that the grant from the Bay Path Elder Services specifies, we have to create a tracking system for the seniors and volunteers as well. So that took a significant piece of our time with this volunteer position. But we coordinated the Fall Yard Cleanup Day, which involved connecting seniors and the football team, trying to get people in to accept service and who was in most need, sometimes prioritizing that. We couldn't get everybody the help that they wanted. We worked on a snow shoveling service, which is the third year we have been trying to do that, where the sports teams, the hockey team over at the high school, the previous 2 years, had done that service as community service. And this year, that was a little bit more of a challenge to try to coordinate. So, and sometimes when we didn't have the sports teams available to help us, Nancy spent a significant amount of time going out and going back to the neighborhoods where the people requested the service and kind of even cold calling the neighbors to see if they and their teenage children would help come in and support some of the seniors. We did another spring yard cleanup day because fall yard was so successful and people kept calling and saying, "Can you come back and break?" One of the other pieces I think that was important was the volunteer coordinator was out there recruiting and networking with our community programs. So being able to meet with the community service person over at the high school and middle school so we could get the people connected to us and know that we want to link students with seniors in providing services. Nancy also met with the PTO in both the high school and the middle school to connect with them, make sure they're aware of the program. She also connected with the churches in the community, and we're looking at trying to start a program this coming year of having the church provide another type of program, an additional program or service for the seniors in the community. She worked with the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts. This year we had a Girl Scout who was trying to coordinate her Gold Award or her Silver Award. The Gold Award. And so Nancy worked with her as well as I did to try to help her connect with seniors and collaborate on getting our successful project. It was creating intergenerational programs. Some of these things we had tried to start in previous years, but due to time constraints, I didn't always have the time to dedicate to follow up on it. What I liked about the volunteer coordinator position is it could be an ongoing contact and networking position with our schools and with our churches and with other service organizations in the community.
So you actually sort of answered a follow-up question that I had. I was wondering, you know, it looks like if I read the paperwork correctly, that the first year this was really in place was last year in 2013?
Yes, it was a 2-year funded grant, but we didn't get it started until quite, far along in the first grant cycle. So, yes, which finished up in July. We used all our hours.
So am I correct in assuming that fewer of these programs were in place prior to bringing on the volunteer coordinator?
Yes.
Just because
Yes.
there was no time to be a liaison between?
Yes, and I think that the point, the piece we'd like to sustain in the Council on Aging is to have a point person to come in, or as these requests come in, they can come in and connect with the volunteer coordinator, and she can help oversee the projects and do the detail work, and then if there needs to be support support between projects, that I can help support that, or the administrative assistant can do that as well.
You know, having served on the regional school committee, I'm really pleased to hear that there has been that you have reached out to the school, because there is a need for all the students to do community service. And it's just wonderful that they're actually doing community service hours in our community, because there is a need. So.
And there's some that do more one-to-one. So we have some that are coming in that are doing more, like we had one woman who could not figure out her digital camera, and so we had a student to come and help her figure out how to do that. Another one wanted to set up a website. So there was a student, it was a breeze for them. They helped her set up a website for her program. So it's nice having that link.
Well, I'm told if you upgrade to iOS 7 on your iPhone, you need to be under 20 for it to work. So.
I agree. I haven't loaded that one yet.
So one of the things that I found out in that process specific to the high school students is that there were far more opportunities than we were able to put in place, primarily because it really involved a fair amount of hand-holding. It's not an efficient process, but there are a lot of seniors who would have benefited from helping with the phones, helping with the cameras, changing their smoke detectors, checking radon alarms, things like that. And it's just a matter of connecting with the community service director at the high school to let him know what's involved, and even taking it a step further than that, because a lot of these high school kids are not necessarily proactive in looking for opportunities. So it's a little bit of word of mouth, a little bit of networking, a little bit of cold calling on my part to kids that I know who might be interested and have the proclivity to, someone who's into computers. reaching out to those people. So there are far more connections that could be made than were made last year. And it was kind of exciting as well as frustrating to realize that.
Well, with 1 year behind you, you certainly can increase those numbers of opportunities.
I think we learned a lot about what worked and what didn't, and where we should spend more time. And one of the pieces that we looked at for the fall is getting this networking time in place. It's getting in now and setting up some of these programs instead of trying to set up the snow shoveling, getting, in November, starting in September, October, to recruit a sports group or a community service group to commit to it, and then we can recruit the seniors and make it work.
So you had mentioned, this is my last question.
That's all right.
Absolutely
No, no,
promise.
That's good.
So you had mentioned a tracking system was put in place. So could you talk a little bit about how you envision utilizing the tracking system? Like, are you going to be looking at perhaps leads that didn't pan out as well? Because I would think that would help you in the future.
What we looked at is Nancy created some tracking programs through Excel of being able to track the seniors that were served, because that's how we had to report it to our grant funding source. It wasn't always the amount of volunteers we recruited. We had to report the number of senior volunteers, but also the number of seniors that received service by a volunteer. So she had to kind of really create some detailed information, and we had to make sure on a daily basis that we were gathering that information from our programs. When we had a program, that we would be making sure to detail who volunteered for this program and how did they help, which are new programs, which were ongoing programs. And with this new, the town has purchased this My Senior Center software program, which Bill Clark is overseeing and working with that, for the My Senior Center guys, to get that program started up for us. So we've been feeding him the data and information that we have. Actually, I was talking to him today about this. And the goal is a lot of the information that Nancy set up in the Excel, we're going to transfer over into the My Senior Center software program. And then that program has all the systems and frameworks set up so that we can track things, I think, in a more efficient manner.
And I think it'll save a lot of data entry time.
Okay. So it's more of a contact tracking kind of database?
I think so. I think each senior will either have a little key fob or a code or something, and it can be swiped as they go into the exercise class, or when they go into the lifetime learning class, or
that's great.
If they get bread from the bagel donations. Rather than me sitting in front of the computer or one of the volunteers sitting in front of the computer and inputting the data, and then
Which we were doing on a monthly
very time
basis.
consuming.
Here, you'll be creating the database. The time will be invested in creating the database to start, but in putting in the basic information about a senior, and then to go in when the programs happen, you're going to link it to them. If they went to this program, and they went to that program. But their data, basic data, statistical data is in there. So hopefully we'll be able to use that to write grants and create reports and share information.
Now, this would be used for 5 hours a week if approved?
What we put out in this grant proposal.
So is this sort of a shared job? Because it is in the administrative assistant's job responsibility also, as far as volunteer
To
coordination.
help coordinate volunteer activities, yeah. There is a line in the administrative assistant job description that states to do that. I believe that was put in there originally because when she was hired, there was a program called the TLC program, which was an I'm OK program, a telephone reassurance program. And at that point, that position was overseeing that program, which has since been moved on to the sheriff's department. I believe does that now. It's not done at a local level anymore because of confidentiality and HIPAA laws.
So is the administrative assistant doing any volunteer coordination work going forward?
I'd say in a minimal way, so that, for example, when she's coordinating a program like the spirituality luncheon, yeah, she helps recruit volunteers for that program. But to do the outreach and the networking and the recruiting, that's not really part of what her role has been since I've been director.
So is she more collecting, basically performing the administrative function for that, logging in who says they're going to attend, so you
Yes.
understand what the head count is?
The bell ringers was a good example for the Salvation Army, that I reached out to a lot of people to see if they could take a half-hour shift around Christmas time to ring the bell over to the Salvation Army, the Red Bucket. And I'm not there 8 hours a day, so I would make phone calls and send emails, but I wasn't always there to receive the phone calls back. So Sue was there more often than not when I was not, and we tried to schedule it that way so that there would be somebody in the office to assist somebody else besides Janet in the office at most times. So in that sense, she would, receive a phone call and, write it in on the schedule that I created, yes, so it can work from 11:30 to 12.
Because what we're trying to do is, instead of have somebody calling in and saying, well, we'll have the volunteer coordinator get back to you, we wanted it to kind of be a seamless program of service. So that somebody would call in and Sue or I could pick up on what Nancy initiated and continue for the program.
Okay. If there was not grant money available, could the administrative assistant, or the existing, overall the whole staff, could this job be fulfilled?
Not to the extent that we're proposing,
Okay.
no.
When I look at the spreadsheet for fiscal year 13 versus 14, I see a more than threefold jump in the amount of money that you're going to be using from the gift fund
Yes.
to finance the three programs, the fitness instructor, yoga instructor, and Qigong instructor.
Right.
So you're going from $13.95 to $46.10, which is more than 3 times as much. Where do those additional funds come from? What?
There's a total of $44,000 in the gift fund. And one of the things that we looked at as a board, the board has looked at, and we've been talking about, is how we're going to use the funds in that gift fund to best support the seniors in the community. One of the things we know is one of the greatest needs requested is for health and wellness programs and basically fitness programs. And so it seemed to be a sound decision to look back and pulling money from the gift fund to go back and provide, to keep people healthy in a physical and hopefully mental way as well.
Well, okay, that's great, but the fitness instructor last year had a total of 98 classes,
Right?
okay? And you used $405 from the gift fund.
Right.
In fiscal year 14, it's 97 classes, so it's one less,
Right.
and you're using 4 times as much from the gift fund.
Because we're reducing the amount of money from the operating budget as well. Because we reduce money from the operating budget because we're trying to use that whole category of professional fees to fund not just fitness classes.
Okay. So when the warrant committee, you are going to reduce your operating budget for fiscal 2015? Is that what you're saying?
No, because of what happened with the professional fees is that they're not just for these 3 sources of funding. This chart only reflects the fitness programs
Right.
funded through formula grant, and then also through other sources of funding. It doesn't detail the amount of money that's also spent on other things like a singing group coming in or a craft class being performed or whatever. Those all come out of under our professional fees budget. So as we try to extend those classes, we're trying to balance these other classes.
And is the gift fund growing?
I think it has grown in the past year or
I mean,
so.
are you getting donations to fund it, or in other words, very often, you'll look at a fund and say, I'm only going to take the interest from it. I'm going to
Yes.
keep the principal.
Yes,
Unless you have, donations that are coming in that are
Right.
keeping it up, hopefully at an amount higher than what you're taking out. So how is that working here?
I think one of the things that's different about the COA, and actually I brought this in, Dave and Greer and I were speaking about this recently, is that the COA runs all its money through the gift fund. That's historically how it's been done since I was hired. And so we talked about possibly the need for a revolving fund, because all the program income that comes in from, as people contribute money for buying a transportation ticket, attending a trip,
Lunches?
luncheons.
All that goes into
All
the
run
gift
through the
fund?
gift fund.
It's
Right.
technically a revolving fund.
Well,
Well,
as-
technically, except it's also mixed in, I assume, with
It's all
donations.
mixed. It's all mixed, so
It's all mixed
donations
together.
is. So that's one of the reasons why it's difficult to track. So I talked to Greer and Dave just a couple weeks ago about, should this be an item we start talking about, and our board is going to discuss it tomorrow as well at the board meeting.
As a warrant article to create a.
To create a revolving
Yeah,
fund.
so that it's clear of what money comes in. Some gift monies are donated now to the Friends of the COA, some donations go that way, but I did receive a donation yesterday from somebody specifically for the exercise class that was written to the Dover Council on Aging, so that'll go into the gift fund.
So can you just explain to me quickly, that is the Council on, Friends of Council on Aging, that's separate from
It's a
this
private
gift fund?
nonprofit.
Okay,
So
see, I
it's
was
not-
under the impression it was the same fund. Okay, so,
No.
so this, all right, so
It allows
this
us to
fund,
raise funds.
okay,
Through the Friends.
Right, the Friends can raise funds.
Yeah, but we can't.
okay.
We don't go out and do fundraising.
So then this is just citizens or
This is
people
people that are
making
contributing
donations?
to programs, or have made a donation, or when they, say for example, a trip, we did a trip recently to the PBS Essex Museum, and the checks that people make payable to Dover go into the gift fund, and then we receive a bill from PBS Essex Museum on the bus, and the funds come out to pay for that, so.
So this is a
It's
revolving
not-
fund.
it's not-
If ever there was a revolving fund
This is
description,
it.
it's this one.
Right.
Well, a lot of the money originally,
Yeah.
came, when I first came on, was the Senior Citizen Club disbanded, and they donated all the funds that they had to the COA. And since then, we've had a couple of people on their deaths have left money to the town. So this isn't all through the other, a lot of this was given a long time ago.
No, I understand that,
So I think
but
it's
to your
like
point, I think you
Right.
certainly have my support to
Well, we've
to
been
work
talking
up a
about that for a
revolving
long
fund. I
time.
think
Yeah.
it prohibits your ability actually to meaningfully use the gifts
Yes,
when you don't know
right.
how much of it is gift versus fee, right?
Exactly.
I think it would be very helpful to you, for all of you to also track it, because then you get the true cost of,
Right.
you know, certain
Right.
programs based upon the number of
Right.
people enrolling. And see how confused I was.
It is confusing.
No, we did want
There's
this.
sometimes, there's a lot of layers to it.
Well, over the last year or so, you found that the Board of Selectmen, when anybody comes in, asks for a lot of information, because we try to justify our answers, whether it's a building or a fire truck or this particular grant. So, you know, it's to a point now where the COA, which we supported the immediate acquisition of that software last year, so you can track people attending, and I believe it tracks volunteers and
It'll
So that's
actually
great.
track transportation if we get to that point.
so that's great. So now as we develop more data to either support or sort of get in a great conversation about whether you need a building, obviously we supported the van and hopefully that'll come to fruition soon. But one of the things I just don't want to do is rubber stamp a grant approval, whereas we're collecting all this data on the other things. Why don't we put this in the same category? And what I mean by that is, if we support this and approve it this evening, I would like to see some data over the next year. So this isn't going to be rubber stamped every year.
Yes.
You know,
I hear what you're saying.
perhaps we'll approve it this evening, and it depends on all of us, obviously. Now, I don't know how a grant employee, employee of grant monies, are they an employee of the town? How does that work?
They are.
Okay, so, so all the rules and regulations of the personnel board of the town. Okay, so that hasn't changed then. What I would like to do, perhaps going forward then, if, Janet, you can, I imagine it would be Janet, meet with Greer, I hate to throw you in this mix, and I'll tell you later, Greer, what I'm thinking. But meet on maybe a monthly basis to, you know, justify and support the arguments for this type of person. Maybe next year, the year after, then you say, we really need this person. We're gonna go to the warrant committee and try to get someone. So you need the numbers, you need the hard data behind you for future purposes. So maybe it's in our best interest to really get hard numbers here over the next year. And this was great, a lot of information. I haven't read it all, I'll be honest with you, I just got it this evening. But I will, I'm meeting with your board meeting tomorrow morning. I look forward to that.
Do you have specific categories that you want to capture data on, or is that something that Greer and Janet and...
I think we can, this is a moving target for me personally, and
Yeah,
perhaps
no,
you
I
guys
think
know better than I do also.
We can work on it, see what's available. We don't really know the full extent of the software. And then as needed, Janet could ask you questions, I could ask them of our IT person, so.
I guess I misunderstood. Are you talking about tracking what the software can do, or what?
No,
I spend
yeah,
my time
absolutely, the
doing-
grant, and what the grant is supplying to the town, so to speak.
And hopefully the software will then track it. Software is
Absolutely.
not being used at this
Right.
point, so we'll just have to track what we have until the software is implemented.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, I think what we're asking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, it's always better if you meet on a monthly basis to talk about what you're doing, so that at the end of the year, you don't suddenly have to scratch your head and say, oh my God, what were the 15 things that I did?
That's what I was thinking.
Right, so then this way, if you meet regularly with Greer, we'll also get a sense of what the software is capable of doing.
Over time, I think we'll understand.
And then
its
understand
capabilities
also what opportunities are out there. And
Was I clear in my thinking?
I think it makes a lot of sense
It makes sense.
if what I'm regurgitating back to you is what your
Yeah.
intentions were.
Yeah, brief,
Right,
this is what we
okay.
did, this is why, to support the argument in the future. So when you come in next year, or the year after that, and you're a new selectman, you haven't had data. This is what we've been doing the last 3 years. This is what we did. This grant is good for the town. This is why we wanted to do it again. Or at some point, you go to the warrant committee, as personnel changes, and change happens. And the more data you have, the more information, the better for everyone moving forward.
Well, it should be a management tool for you, Janet, as for the board, because, as you've already said, last year was really, developing the job, seeing what's out there, making some contacts and so forth. So a certain part of that is established now. So the time spent in fiscal year 14 will be different because you don't have to spend the time doing that establishment.
I agree.
After 2 years, there's even more established. At some point, basically the way programs are supposed to work, at some point, things become almost just rolling along, like a lot of your, knitting classes and everything else. I mean, there's just nothing to be done there. Knitting is knitting, and it happens. So at some point, you might, to Jim's point and to Robin's point, say, you know what? We don't need the grant money for that position at that hours. We can actually better spend the grant money somewhere else because this stuff is becoming more routine. And you won't know that without this type of analysis. So,
No, I don't want to put a burden on anyone. Dave, you okay with that also?
Certainly, yeah. I think this has been a learning process. The silver lining in the gift grant law is it has allowed us to see and understand better how the COA operation works. We didn't know before. The whole idea of where the money went into the gift fund, that's news. We didn't know this before.
Right.
So
Okay.
we'll learn a lot going forward, I'm sure.
Feedback on my suggestion?
I think that's fine. I don't know, Greer and I have met quite a bit in the past 2 months.
Yes.
So,
If we do this more regularly,
Yeah.
perhaps there would be so much information to gather all at once. That was
And
really-
that way we can make sure that when we're tracking things, it is that we can have guidance or more questions to help us, restructure how we're tracking things.
Okay. What was the exact amount of the grant?
$9,168, I believe.
Okay. I am comfortable at this point. Carol, do you have any further comments? Robin?
No.
Okay. I would like the motion that we accept the grant monies? Accept the grant monies?
Authorize the acceptance and expenditure.
And expenditure, thank you, of the formula grant money in the amount of $9,168. And we talked about things that will do going forward, meeting monthly, not rubber stamping this particular grant. Every year, it still has to be, it has to come before the Board of Selectmen, obviously, like any grant and gift in the town. So that is my motion, I believe. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Very good, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice show.
And again, I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
I like my bagels just toasted on the top, just toasted.
Maybe I should, I like bagels, maybe I should go.
You can go all the time. You're welcome to come, Robin, just to see where we are and what we're doing.
Okay, I will, I can't do it tomorrow, but I will talk to Jim and I will attend one of the
Speaking of
meetings.
where you are, how's it going over there?
Good question.
Actually, it's very nice.
I like the setting.
It's very bright, it's good energy, I think it's a nice space. I think that people are figuring out where we are.
That's good.
I'm still not sure we've moved. But actually, for me, it's very convenient because I'm able to go down the hall when there's a program going on, kind of get things started and coming back instead of having to go across the street. So it's very convenient for me. And I've had really positive feedback from the seniors that they like the space very much.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great
I
news.
think maybe when they come to the blue room, some people may look at the blue room and say, well, what's happening? I suggested to Janet that maybe we should have a little sign on the door saying, come visit us, also visit us at the director's office in the yellow room.
Yeah.
Which is down the hall.
Oh, that's a great
because
idea.
They still don't have the idea that both rooms go together.
And we're planning an open house in November. So
Yep.
as we finalize that, we'll definitely, I believe it's going to be November 14th.
14th.
Check my dates.
So we're allowed to host.
All of you come.
Sounds wonderful.
Good.
That's
I
great.
know I stopped by, I think the first or second day that you had moved in, and you said that you had already made some contact with Park and Rec, with Mike, about
Yeah,
some
yeah.
programs. and-
I talked to Mark. We're looking at starting a Zumba Gold class. And we're trying to look at doing that in November, December. And then we were looking at maybe starting another archery. We had some interest in archery. So it's
Go right along the deer culling program.
We'll see. So
I have a whole bunch of targets that move around my property.
let's start that. And then I think we were talking about in January, as people are kind of getting to their New Year's resolutions of starting another maybe a core fitness class. So we
that
tried
sounds
to,
really
we had a great lunch workshop with Mark from Park and Rec Department in June, and maybe it was July. And we had a lot of feedback from seniors about what kind of programs they wanted. So it's been great working with them because we've been meeting together and he's been pulling things together.
And
So we
that
can start some.
it seems like that had been his background too, working with the cities.
And
I
why?
think he did.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yes.
He's very good at it.
Excellent.
Very good. Well, thank you for coming in, explaining
Go
this.
ahead.
Yes.
And thank you for your patience.
I think I should thank them for their.
Well, I mean before tonight. You can thank them tonight. I thank him up
I
before
thank you
tonight.
for your patience today.
And thank for your appreciation.
Absolutely.
I worked on this quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yes, we did, yeah. Thank you, Jan.
Well, thank you, Betty, thank you, Nancy, for coming
Thank you
in.
very much.
Good luck.
Good night.
There you go. As we move along in our agenda,
Right on time.
that's right, we have appointments. And this evening, I know there's going to be a few, and Carol, you want to start?
Sure, just have a very few. Today is in blue. Page, well, I'm not sure which page it is, I've got them over. Fence viewers.
Okay.
So tradition is that the selectman who has retired from position becomes a fence viewer.
What, may I ask, what is a fence viewer?
They view fences, obviously.
So in the olden days, there's some poetry about that, I think, from Robert Frost, on fences and stuff. So if there was a dispute between neighbors about the fence, it's your property, my property, blah, 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 the fence viewer would go out and,
Okay.
Really? So it's more traditional.
it's a very traditional.
I think
yes.
that's pretty good.
Yes. So, as we move along, so Kathy Weld and David Heinlein have been the fence viewers. I haven't had a chance to get a hold of David yet, but I spoke to Kathy, and with regret, she understood that since she was the first of the selectmen of the two, that her term is now up. And I did speak with Joe, and Mr. Melican is quite willing to become a fence viewer.
Oh, that's
Excellent.
wonderful.
So Kathy.
So Kathy is off, and we'll find something to do with her spare time from
Yeah.
not being on that. And Joe Melican has agreed to take that 3-year position.
Great, and we'll wait on David getting back to you then?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Well, that's great to hear from Joe. That's great.
Yep. So I make a motion to appoint Joe Melican for a 3-year term as a fence viewer to replace Kathy Well.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now, do you have the new one there or the old one?
Here's a new one, if you want.
The new one,
I
too.
keep
Do you have the
an
new
old
one?
one.
Yeah.
What do you show for long-range planning? Oh, you show Robert, okay. Yeah. That's it, okay. Let's see if I have the new one. Nope, I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Robin, do you have someone?
I do, for the Personnel Board, I have talked to Sue Jeremiah, and she would be very happy to serve another 3-year term on the board.
I thought we appointed her last week,
I don't think
I
so.
don't believe so.
because I had it crossed off. Okay.
Maybe it was in response to an email I sent you letting you know.
Okay, thank you. Well, I will second Sue's appointment to the Personnel Board for a 3-year term. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good. Now, Dave, as ex officio, the selectmen appoint you. Should we do that this evening, or is that just automatic?
For which?
The Personnel Board?
I'm ex officio, so I'm,
We just updated.
Oh, it's all updated, yes.
Yeah, we just
Yeah.
updated it on the list annually. It's
And then
not
I
a-
think I
Okay,
already
good.
asked the question about Mary, and she said she was appointed by the warrant committee?
yes.
Yeah, that
She
happens.
was.
Okay, all right,
Yep.
that's what she said too.
The warrant committee's all over that.
Okay.
That's it, easy.
Just wanted to make sure.
Okay, good, Robin. Do you have anybody else?
I do not,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Mr. Ramsey, I think you have some appointments.
Mr. Chairman, on page 8, the Norfolk County Advisory Board. I spoke with Bob Purdy, and he is more than happy to serve again.
Thank you. I'll make the motion that we accept Robert Purdy for the Norfolk County Advisory Board for a 3-year term.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
You're welcome, Mr. Chairman. And then jumping on down to page 11. Oops, yes, page 11. Mr. Hughes has informed me that he's more than willing to serve again as the Right to Know Coordinator and the Superintendent of Streets.
I'll make the motion to appoint Craig Hughes to the Right to Know Coordinator and, in a 1-year term, and the Superintendent of Streets, also for a 1-year term.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And Ms. Weidman is happy to serve another year as the town accountant.
Okay, I'll make the motion to appoint Carol Wyden as Town Accountant for a 1-year term.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Do we,
And I have one other one, Mr.
you want to appoint yourself?
Oh, actually, I have two others. On page 12, to the position of town sexton,
Yes.
Lawrence R. Eaton Jr. is happy and honored to serve again.
I'll make the motion to appoint Lawrence R. Eaton Jr. as the Town Sexton for a 3-year term.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
And last but not least, Bill Hurd has agreed to serve again as the Veterans Grave Officer.
Veterans Grave Officer. Didn't we have 2 appointments?
It's on page 13.
Veterans Grave.
At the top of the
Veterans
page.
Service Director.
Veteran Services, I'm still working on that one.
Thank you.
Veterans Grave Officer, that would be Mr. Hurd.
Okay, I'll make the motion to appoint Bill Hurd as the Veterans Grave Officer for a 3-year term.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. I do have one appointment. Laura Walter on the Tree Committee has said she will re-up for another 3 years.
So do we have an open spot from Carrie's resignation?
Yes, it is. I haven't filled that yet.
Okay.
I'm working with the chair, Mr. Devine, on that matter.
Do we have to vote for that appointment?
yes.
Or did we?
I'll make the I'll make the motion to reappoint Laura Walter for a 3-year term on tree committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. So we have some stragglers. A lot of it's you, Dave, quite honestly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just so you know, just so our viewership knows.
It's not him.
That's right.
Okay, everyone else have an appointment?
Well, on that note, I'd like to commend Mr. Ramsey, however, because he does take it as an opportunity to check in with a lot of these folks and spend some time chatting with them, rather than just reappoint them.
Yes.
And
Thank you,
that's a
Mrs.
good
Lisbon,
thing.
for coming to my defense. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Dave. Next agenda item is to continue reviewing the fiscal year 2015 capital budget requests. And last time we met, we talked generically about, I believe, police and highway in the Selectmen's office. Do we have new ones this evening?
Nope, these are all as they were presented to you last meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Which one would you like to start with first, Mr. Chairman?
It's up to you, Carol.
I don't know, what do you read?
You do have a narrative from the town
Oh, okay, so
administrator
this
that
is the
was
bill?
missing last time,
Yeah, I was wondering, yeah.
and the expense-to-date data on the outstanding one. That's the new information.
Would you like to summarize the narrative for our television audience, Dave?
Well, briefly, Mr. Chairman, it basically describes the program for fiscal year 15, the replacement of the carpeting in the upper level of the library for $30,000, $60,000 for the re-roofing of the flat roof of the library, $400,000 for the protective agency's building dispatch reconfiguration. All of these previously occurred. There are 2 new items being proposed for 2015. One is the modification of the 2 overhead bay doors at the fire station to better accommodate the new ladder truck, with a price to be determined. And then the second is to provide air conditioning in the new Council on Aging space, which we just heard from the COA folks is delightful. Those are the 2 new items in 2015.
Right. The fire station overhead door, do we have a time frame when we might get information on the numbers involved there?
We made it a priority for the architect to present the proposal, and in fact tried to reach him late this afternoon, was not able to do so, but obviously we want to get some firm budget estimates on that.
Okay.
I know at the last meeting, when we first saw these, we talked about various options to doing that, and I hope that the next time that we're talking about it, that we can, that those options will have been explored.
And an estimate of cost provided
Right.
for some of those
Yes,
options
yeah.
as well.
I mean, I find this request so appalling that I'd really prefer to find other options to it. On the community center space, so, we've moved the COA over there. There are a bunch of other community center items on the out years. And I would, sorry, I was out of town for the CMAC meeting last week, but was there a discussion at the CMAC meeting about the priority of these identified issues?
They would like to see the rehab of the 4 public restrooms moved up from fiscal 2019, which is where they are right now. As the board may recall, typically when an item is new, unless there's a compelling reason for it, like in the case of the overhead doors or the air conditioning, we generally put it out as far out as we can for consideration, and then certainly the board and the process can move them in as it sees fit. But that was a strong feeling of the CMAC folks. And certainly in our walkthrough, the reason it's out there at all is those bathrooms are campy. They're original kids' locker room issue back when that school was built. So.
I take it they're not handicap ADA ready? Are they?
They're handicapped accessible by exception. You know,
Okay,
there's a
right.
stall or two in each
I mean, we spent
bathroom.
money within the last 2 or 3 years to make those bathrooms handicap accessible.
But it was a modest sum, and this is more about gut rehab and the whole thing, so it's a different experience in a child's locker room from the 40s or whenever it was done.
So the 4 public restrooms, I'm always on the second floor, so I can identify 2 there, so 2 each floor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Down the end of the hallways, right.
And the
So-
seniors, of course, probably just use the first floor.
Yes.
So,
And we could phase them, probably.
you know, I guess this just brings up the whole issue that I really would like to see, since it doesn't appear that it was done at the last CMAC meeting, for the next CMAC meeting, to really explore all these items with input, and perhaps, Jim, you can bring it up tomorrow
Okay.
at the COA meeting, to get a sense of the priorities of the tenants, specifically COA, to this. In other words, and have they identified anything else that's not on this list?
Not to my knowledge. And
We
Joe
asked them?
Devine was there. Yes, well, as part of the process, Carl talks with the COA director
Okay,
before we put these together. So that input was received. That's why the AC is in there
yep,
for the first year. That was their priority at the time we spoke to them. The bathrooms were our thoughts.
I see.
And they picked up on them and said, we'd like to see them moved in, not necessarily to the first year. I mean, I guess ideally, everyone would like everything in the first year, but
well, of course, but right.
sooner rather than later
Well, that's
is
why
the
I'm
impression.
interested in really delving down and really exploring the priorities a little bit more. I mean, I think about the main entranceway walkway, which we've talked about for a while, and
The front door.
that they've spoken about for a while, yet it's out in fiscal year 19. So I think we need to do a little bit more work on identifying, prioritizing
Okay.
for the
We
community
also
center.
need, what would be helpful is if any items are potentially a safety risk or maybe by delaying them, it would be important to understand that as well.
Well, there aren't safety risks associated with these projects
Okay, all
at
right.
this time.
That led me to my question, the outside stairway, is that the rear of the building?
Yes,
It's all cement and steel railing, is that the one?
yes. There is no railing on the exterior, and I think that's the concern that people have.
Legitimate concern. Okay. I would think that's somewhat of a priority, but I will bring that up tomorrow morning. It's a
Yeah.
good suggestion. Okay. If in fact, the entrance walkway, I've always thought that that's sort of been jury-rigged, so to speak, over the last year or so.
Several years.
And it helps that maintenance trucks don't use it anymore, I imagine. So that might be moved up. When's the next CMAC meeting?
Well, they're usually one a month, so I don't know if it.
I
Couple
think
weeks
it's
out,
No-
maybe.
I think it's November.
Okay.
So,
I think it's November.
Well, I'll develop some from the COA, what their thought is on priorities, and then I can forward that to you guys and talk about it in CMAC and
November 13th is the next
come
one.
to a consensus on priority over the years for these things. Okay. Good thought, Carol.
and maybe given that, we'll have to move in the CMAC meeting. Maybe.
Okay.
And so, Dave, what's the plan on the protective agencies building reconfiguration? That number's been around for a while?
It's went down, actually.
If the board is interested in pursuing this, and I presume they are because they asked us to put it back on, I'd like to refresh the numbers, ask the architect to refresh the numbers and get Chief McGowan's input to the extent it might affect the budget. He indicated a couple things, but I'm not sure they're even structural or design related. But certainly freshen up the numbers, because you're right, Mrs. Lipton, these numbers are aged.
I was on Capitol, I don't know how many years ago, when previous Chief Griffin really supported this, and I remember we walked over there, did the tour, and there was a set of plans for the whole build-out, and there was about $450,000 whatever the number was. So is Chief McGowan supporting the previous set of plans, and we're just going to update dollar figures on that?
In essence, yes. He's very supportive. We had a meeting in June with the architect who prepared the plans, and when he was done explaining exactly what had been proposed, Chief McGowan was enthusiastic and committed, and he has asked that this, continue.
Okay.
This was turned down at town meeting, right?
It was actually approved at town meeting, but it failed at the
Yeah,
ballot as a
ballot.
capital exclusion. It was voted, it was endorsed by the warrant committee, the capital budget committee, Board of Selectmen, and it passed by a modest number at town meeting.
Okay. So we should get serious about that particular matter, because it is a big dollar figure, sooner than later in getting all the numbers.
I think it would also be helpful, just as a refresher, to go over exactly what the plan entails.
Absolutely.
Well, our plan, Mrs. Hunter, is to invite you over for a personal tour, and certainly not to exclude the other selectmen, but they're welcome to come, but to give you a specific tour of the facility and what's being proposed.
That would be very helpful for me.
Good.
Is the re-roofing of the flat roof of the library, is that a preventative, or are we having issues?
It's preventative, and we've asked a roofing fellow to take a hard look to see if, in fact, this is the time. It's at the end of its design useful life, but we always ask the question, okay, but now here we are, can we get some more time out of it? Can we do some repairs to extend its life, like we did upstairs in the roof here?
I see.
We don't know that that's a definite.
No.
You know, I'm always one to have everything look in tip-top shape, no matter what the age. In the Whiting Road building, I see the painting of the exterior is out a number of years out, and that you might want to consider bringing that in. I mean, it is set back, and no one really drives by that. Most of the town doesn't drive by that building on a regular basis. But I do appreciate when things look good and when things don't. And that one, we did a service to the town when we took down that back garage building a couple of years ago, because that was an eyesore and perhaps a dangerous spot. But this particular building is somewhat of an eyesore in its current state.
And the proposal to paint it is to slap protective paint on it. It's not to make it look real good. It's just
It's
to...
really the front of the building.
Right, for the
that's
left-hand
work.
side, right?
The old
Yeah.
chapel entrance. And we discussed this a while ago. I don't, that's the kind of thing, if I was having it at my house, my husband would take care of it on a Saturday. So I'm not sure that it's even a capital thing, about nailing back some stuff that's falling off and slapping some paint on it. So I understand we're going through the whole building, but from a cosmetic standpoint immediately, I'd like to know why we can't just, through the building maintenance budget, take care of the front.
And I think we are contemplating some ad hoc stuff like that, if we haven't done it already.
If you remember, we did that in the past when we used existing employees to, remember that we boarded up the side
Yep.
door and,
Yep.
through the maintenance budget. So that's a good point, too. Okay, excellent. The replacement of the wheelchair lift out here, which had been in disrepair for a while, that's all fixed and it only has a life of a few more years?
It is not fixed or having trouble getting a part, and we're exploring using a different vendor.
So then why is, if it's not fixed and it is a wheelchair lift, how come that's in 4 or 5 years out?
Because I think we're going to be able to fix it now, but we're anticipating that as it becomes increasingly aged, we won't be able to find parts.
And that's the lift.
Right out here.
Right
Yep.
out here, yeah. Okay. Is there something we should be a little more proactive on?
I'd better be able to answer that question after we fix it.
If in fact you can fix it. Right. Okay, I can appreciate that. And what's the timing of that? Because, it's sort of an important
Soon.
piece.
Hopefully very soon.
Okay. I don't see... Okay.
So I just have a general question, informational question. So last year for the schools, we had those capital needs assessments done for the buildings. Do we have a similar thing for the other town buildings? And is that what is estimating the useful life of some of the replacements? Because I'm assuming that somewhere we're expecting, like, the townhouse.
Well, I think Dave can answer that specifically. I don't think we have like an official report saying in 2018, replace this roof. It's based on experts who look at it and say, okay, you have more than 10 slates fall off a year, things going to fail in 2 years, and things of that nature. But Dave, please expound
We
on
do
that.
our own internal assessment every year, working with the building users, and where we feel it's necessary, we bring in experts to guide us and give us some guidance on how much more time we got on this. And it's always a balance between being too reactive versus being too proactive.
I understand
We like to
that.
strike that balance, particularly in public procurement, because we can't move fast very well.
So are we reasonably comfortable that we've identified the large capital items that potentially need to get done over the term?
Yes.
That's all I wanted to know.
No, it's a good question. Okay, I don't have any further questions. There's a lot up in the air on this the capital request for fiscal 15. You're all set, Carol?
I am,
Robin?
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. On to the next agenda item. It is to revise the Carroll Management Advisory Committee charge, which is CMAC. Huh? Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry, Carol, I'm jumping ahead. Let's go right back to
Capital budget.
capital budget. And you want to do highway? And then, we talked briefly, no, we didn't. You want to talk about the highway? That's my fault. I jumped ahead.
That's because Craig did such a good job, we have no questions.
You know, I was just going to say that. He pushes it out and gets every single ounce of energy out of the equipment.
Did we get the new street sweeper?
He's hoping it may come in tomorrow.
Okay. If I remember correctly, there is no items on highway that were not in previous out years?
That is correct.
Right.
Dave, this quote for the sander for the 15,500 is dated June 13th.
Uh-huh.
Looks like June. Looks like, yeah, I think it's June. Maybe I've got it up here. Looks like June. So that's, at a minimum 13 months from when we'll be acquiring it. So is this quote committed for 13 months from now? Or should
Actually,
we
on the
be
bottom, it says it's valid for 30 days.
valid for 30 days?
I think it's a reasonably reliable number, particularly given Craig's overall budget. If it were to go up $500 or $1,000, he could cover the difference. But he's typically been very successful with quotes that are not binding, but still, they work for budget purposes.
This is September 6th,
Okay,
2013.
fast,
Yeah.
And it's a good question, because there's a common misconception that we can go out and bid stuff and legally hold the prices for this long. We can't.
Well, especially
Right.
something like stainless steel, which tends to fluctuate quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay. But then if you go on to the 2014, the F-450. I know some of the quotes, whether it's police cars or not, they go out a solid year, though. They quote the number, and it's good for a year, though, right?
I think this MHQ bid is that.
Right.
It's a state contract
state
for a year,
contract.
yeah.
Okay. And he can't get a sander under the same type of situation?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, we have to reiterate that Craig really does squeeze every ounce out of the equipment.
Certainly does.
So you really can't, I mean, you can question the numbers and you question the type of equipment, but you can't question his effort to try to get every single ounce out of it. Okay, and, last but not least, I believe is the police capital budget projections. And this is aside from the reconfiguration of the dispatch center, which we briefly talked about. This is a 2-year
It is.
car, okay? And I'm sure everyone's familiar with the 212.
Actually, for 2015, I think it's one car.
Okay,
Don't we budget gross?
yes, I think we do.
I
Because
think that's right.
Because especially now that the trade-in is even on, often is,
Although we did revise the language under the motion to allow something different than we did before. So I'd have to revisit that question, Mrs. Liz, and be sure. I think it's gross.
It makes a lot of sense to have the gross numbers in
Yeah.
there,
But I want to
especially
double
with
check
the
that.
appropriations.
Yeah.
have we ever used our tasers?
We have,
We have.
with tremendous success, I might add. They have actually, they're so effective now that once you've been tased, you don't want to relive that experience, so you go
I can imagine.
willingly from then on.
Words to live by, don't get tased.
Not
Tased.
to be confused with hazed.
That's true. Neither one, though.
Right.
This is, so the speed trailer, he put out to 16. Did he move that? Wasn't that, because I remember last year, Chief wanted that, the message in the speed trailer, and I thought we pushed that a year. But now it's in 2016.
I think as a result of the discussion, he timed it for the replacement when the one we have now will have
Okay?
exhausted its useful life.
Okay, so there's one patrol car, the live scan fingerprint machine, which is cutting technology, but I understand it's very useful for law enforcement with immediate results, whether you have a good guy or a bad guy in your car. The dress uniforms, is that in there every few years, the dress uniforms?
That's a placeholder.
It's been there for a number of years. It always seems to get pushed out for other priorities, but I think it's better than a wish list item, but...
I remember Chief McGowan was, talked eloquently about that last year and how he wanted to upgrade the appearance of his officers, and I understood that.
How did you think they looked today?
Well, you know, but for special occasions
No, I
and...
think-
ceremonial
Right.
things, funerals
Yes.
and things. And it's becoming increasingly normative that departments have them.
Yeah.
And I might add, our fire department does have them.
Yes, yes. Okay. Well, do you have any further questions? We will continue to look at capital budgets as the fiscal 2015 budget, operating and capital, comes into clearer focus in the next few months.
So we have, what, one more selectmen's meeting before the due date to capital budget?
I think that's right.
Okay. So there's an awful lot of work then,
The police department.
from the police, yeah, and the fire overhead, the fire department.
I mean, on the building, on the selectmen's.
Right, yeah, okay.
We have some work to do.
Good. Well, thank you for that. And again, I jump now to the Carroll Management Advisory Committee charge. And who would like to speak to this?
Oh, I'll speak to this.
Thank you, Carol.
So when we developed this charge about 10 years ago, that was right after we acquired possession of the building. And we didn't really know how the committee was going to work and what really needed to be done. And of course, over the last 10 years, it's changed from, the selectmen directing Mr. Ramsey and Mr. Warnick to keep the building habitable, to let's fix it up because it looks like we're in it for the long term, which is why we've spent the kinds of funds that we have over the last 4 or 5 years to fix the roof and close the building, handle all the pointing, and now actually getting into some of the cosmetic stuff inside. And I think it's really coming along quite nicely. So you'll see the various amendments to the charge, and that's sort of reflecting the change in the need for the committee. And what we didn't change at the time was we had made it a 1-year appointment. And now it's clear that it's a very beneficial committee for the selectmen and for Mr. Warnick and for Mr. Ramsey. And it's been very helpful to get the tenants together. They're all represented on the committee as well, to really move it forward. So as we're making the appointments this year, it sort of makes sense to make this, to continue the process we've done with most of the other boards and committees over the last 3 or 4 years, which just change all the 1-year appointment, 1 year to 3 years.
That makes a lot of sense.
And this is one of the only ones left that's 3 years. So normally, if it's a standing committee, it's in the bylaws, you have to do a bylaw change, but this just requires a change in the charge.
Good.
That's what this is. So I would like to make a motion to amend the CMAC charge to reflect a 3-year term for its members.
Second.
That's a great idea. All in favor? Aye.
It makes a lot of sense.
Now, as this would be,
Because it's not a short-term committee anymore.
No, it
whereas
takes a while to
before,
get, right, exactly.
the logistics of this amendment, where we have appointed certain people this year. Did you tell them it would be a 3-year appointment, or we have to go back and tell them it's a 3-year appointment?
Oh, we could surprise them.
Or do we need to reappoint them?
Well, we need to reappoint them probably as well, right? What do we have here?
Mary Cable and Anthony Welling.
And we just freed Kathy up from
That's
defense
true.
duty, so she should have
She
time.
should be very happy.
I'll just send out a quick email to the 3 of them.
Okay, before we
And
do
to check it
it.
in the next meeting, we can do that.
Okay, that sounds wonderful.
Good. Thank you, Carol. Next agenda item is to approve the fiscal year calendar. And I believe for the most part, the dates change to correspond with the days of the week of these things that have happened over the years, such as the town meeting, warrant committee open hearing, town caucus, things of that nature, when things are mailed to our townspeople. Big one, obviously, is the town meeting, May 5th in 2014, and town election, May 19th, 2014. And we're going to open our annual warrant on November 21st, 2013. I'm just highlighting some of the more important ones. And the warrant is closed, when is it closed? Closes January 17th, 2014. Good. Any ballot questions? Then we'll review them in March. As I said, the warrant committee's open hearing is March 17th. nomination papers for future elected officials next March 17th. Things of that nature. Should I go into more detail, Dave? Is that fine?
That's fine.
Carolyn?
I'm sure it's posted on the website.
Yes. Yeah, we'll be posting on the website. Is that correct, Greer?
I believe we normally post it and we share it with other key boards and committees, so that
Right.
everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, I like the idea of getting it on the website.
Okay.
So we have to approve the fiscal year 2014 calendar. And I'll make that motion. Do I hear a second? All in favor? Aye. Good, thank you. Next agenda item is to approve 6 special licenses. Is that 5 plus 1 retro, or is that, yes, that is 5 plus 1 retro. And I'll read them, and then we'll vote on them collectively. The first one, which as I said is a retroactive vote, was for Sunday, September 29th at Elm Bank for a wedding. September 30th, which is this evening, at Elm Bank, thank you. And I see that the chief has signed these, good. The next is October 6th at Elm Bank, a wedding. Saturday, October 19th, at a residence on 55 Farm Street. Looks like a PTO initiative. On October 25th at Elm Bank. November 14th at Elm Bank. And those are the 6 special licenses as read. Do I hear a motion to accept those?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And those are completed, thank you. Okay, as we scoot along, we'll approve the September 11th, 2013 meeting minutes. And this particular meeting had to do with acquiring 287 Dedham Street. So there's a lot to the meeting minutes. And also, Board of Health Chair Barbara Rothschild came in for additional lands amongst, Stevie Hagan's recognition night also. Good. These were difficult minutes, so I appreciate the hard work done on these. A lot of moving parts in that meeting.
When I read them, I was surprised at how much we accomplished.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Carol, if you'd like.
I move we approve the minutes of September 11 as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. I'm 5 minutes behind.
You're losing it.
But we have citizens' comments as our last, second to last agenda item every other week. And Doug Lawrence, I don't know if everyone knows Doug Lawrence from the Warren Committee.
Hey, Doug.
And he'll be liaison along with John Cohn, who's chair this year, but thanks for coming, Doug. You have any- You're quite welcome. Do you have any citizens' comments you'd like to offer?
Not at this time.
Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion for adjournment then.
May I just quickly mention
please.
that Old Home Day is this Sunday?
Thank you.
Always a great event, and hopefully the weather will be like it's been for the last week.
I think
Yeah.
it's supposed to be.
Is it?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
long range, if you can put any faith in the long range forecast.
You know, they did a wonderful mailing to the town.
Yes.
I was reading that the other night, and
It
some of the
was-
old
it was
stories
very nice,
about,
right.
in there, and
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. But thank you for reminding us about that. With that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much and good night.